Hi all, and thanks for being with me. I'm going to start today by talking about children in care. Now, this is a subject which not everybody is interested in for reasons which baffle me, to say the least. But it is going to be my topic of discussion because there's a news item that we need to talk about that was broadcast on the ABC. I'll be talking about that in just a minute. So before we get into things, I'd like to think that you could find space to subscribe to my channel. It helps me to develop more and more videos, to have more and more conversations with you, and to hopefully, as my subscribers improve or the numbers improve, to have guests on my show that can talk about issues that matter to them and hopefully that matter to you. So in order to support my channel, it would be really helpful if you subscribe. Now, the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is that a news item had come out about a report made in Victoria in relation to child protection issues. Now, for those of you that watch my channel, and those of you that are probably more recent, some of you will know that I've spent over 2 decades working in the child protection space, advocating for parents who were having their children removed and for fighting a system which simply needed to change. And there are many aspects of this, and maybe I'll do a video at some point about all of those. But the important thing for me is that very few people actually care about this issue. Now, children are our future. The way we educate, the way we care for, the way we interact with children is vital. Not just for their development, for the development of a nation. And the way we treat those certain groups of our community, our children in particular, is woeful. The child protection system I've advocated for decades needs to change, and the workers, my colleagues, other social workers who work in this space, need to change as well. Need to change their attitudes, their beliefs, need to find different ways to work with kids so that the outcomes for kids in care can be different. In Australia at the moment, the number of kids in care ranges around 46 to 50,000, doesn't get any less, and increases at about 7% per year, which means that exponentially, a lot more kids are going to be in care as we move through time. And this year, who knows how many extra kids will be placed into care that shouldn't be there in the first place. It's an appalling system, and it's an abusive system. And a report came out in Victoria just highlights how this has happened. And so I will play you a video which came out this morning from the ABC that sort of highlights these particular issues.
A new report has found Victorian children in out-of-home care in 2023 were expelled or suspended from school at 5 times the rate of other children. It also found only a quarter of them finished Year 12. The Commission for Children and Young People made 47 recommendations to address the issue, but says the Victorian government has not implemented any of them.
It's been 5 years since Jackie completed her VCE.
But the art room is pretty much the same as what you would remember.
But she very nearly didn't get there.
Life was chaotic. I was moving back and forth from different kinds of care from the age of 2, so not a lot of stability.
Abuse, neglect and family violence disrupted her home life and her education. She changed primary schools frequently. Sometimes she didn't make it to school at all.
Well, I would often just be taken and placed somewhere else, and my friends at school wouldn't know. I'd kind of just disappear.
At any given time, around 9,000 Victorian children are in out-of-home care. Only a quarter of them progress from Year 10 to Year 12, compared to more than 80% of students in the general population. In 2022, only 12 students living in residential care were enrolled in Year 12, and none of them completed VCE.
They're being punished for behaviours connected to trauma, they're being met with low expectations, they're being met with stigma. It really is, from my point of view as Children's Commissioner, a pretty appalling and shameful state of affairs.
In late 2023, the Commission tabled a major report in the Victorian Parliament detailing the dire educational outcomes for children in care. It made 47 recommendations, from improved training to financial support. The state government has so far failed to implement any. The Victorian government says it's taking a staged approach to the Commission's recommendations.
I really do think this is an area that needs significant action and urgent action, and to date I have not seen that urgency.
Jackie's final school offered her the flexibility she needed to get over the line, allowing her to complete Year 12 over 3 years. She recently qualified to be a nurse. Her former principal says there's no reason other kids in care can't also succeed.
It's really important for schools, school leaders and our system to support the idea that all schools should be working in the space of supporting kids in out-of-home care.
Jackie is looking forward to a more secure future.
Stable income, stable housing, not having to move around, that'd be nice.
Walking a different path. Sasha Payne, ABC News.
So, look, there's many issues in this. The fact that the Victorian government hasn't taken to adhere to or to administer any of the recommendations in the report is appalling. The bottom line is that we don't care. As a society, we tend to, and I see this in relation to parenting behaviours, and therapeutic responses and a whole host of issues, is that we tend to want to blame the kids. We blame them for their behaviour. We blame them for the way they interact with others. We blame them for their lack of social skills. We blame them for drug use, for violence, for becoming involved in the criminal justice system. We blame them for everything. And we as a society, and this is my major point, I guess, fail to take responsibility for our inaction when it comes to assisting and helping kids. The fact that the Victorian government, and this applies to most governments around Australia, not just Victoria, failed to take responsibility for the care of children. It fascinates me that the state puts up its hand and says, look, I can care for children better than anybody else. That I can, because they're in violent, abusive families, because they've been neglected, I can therefore make sure that they're not abused and they're not neglected. The reality is the opposite happens, that these kids do become abused, they do become neglected. I've worked with kids, or adults I should say, but I've worked with the people who have had up to 80 placements throughout their childhood. There's been very little intervention. The children get blamed for their behaviour because these kids are traumatised. And there's a lack of understanding around social workers and others around the impact of these kids being traumatised through the environments in which they've been raised, and also the traumatisation that happens while in care. And as a result of that, we wind up with a whole host of kids who are uneducated, who don't have the same opportunities that other kids have, whose sense of self, their sense of their value is diminished before they get to the system, and then further diminished once they become a part of this system, which refuses to understand the traumas that these kids have experienced, and therefore fail to be able to implement programs that does cater for these kids' needs. And it's a disaster. And one of the things, I guess, that does concern me the most is the lack of interest that the community displays in these children. And part of that is because people seem to think that these kids deserve it, that, we must blame the children for what has happened. We must ask parents to take responsibility for their behaviours that impact these kids, and we must blame the state for taking these kids away from families, in many cases where they shouldn't have been removed in the first place, and place them in a system that fails to care for them, fails to understand where these kids have come from, and fail to give them the care, the nurturing that they require. Many of these kids, most of them, are smart kids. They have a future, and we have to find ways to provide that future for them, particularly when we take them away from their parents. And as I've said on many occasions on my Child Protection Party YouTube page and whatever, is that we have to understand that the system that we've created harms children. It doesn't enhance their lives at all. And also, we need to understand that there are many kids who could stay with their parents. Programs need to be implemented for those families, admittedly, but, and I won't go into that because that's another conversation in itself. But I guess my point is at the moment is that we've been building a society which denigrates kids, that places them in, many, many places. They don't have a sense of belonging. They get moved from one school to another, from one family to another, into residential care. They are placed in environments which are not family orientated to start with, where they feel that they're outcasts. And this is sad, because we know that the outcomes for these kids is going to be poor. They're more likely to commit crimes. They're more likely to have unhelpful relationships because they've never been shown what a good relationship actually looks like. They fail to care for others because they simply aren't able to care for themselves. They become homeless. But the sad thing is that this is something we could do something about, but we don't. And the sad thing for me is that most people won't give a crap about this particular video, because basically people don't care about kids, and it's sad. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Make some suggestions about how things could be different. Subscribe to my channel for further videos such as this. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.